That's why he'd worn nothing except a breechclout, so his body would fade into the surroundings. Slowly, grateful for the strength in him, he stood and darted behind yet another palmetto. His heart drummed furiously. He clamped his teeth together and willed it to quiet. If Gator was chained, he would have to find another way to free him. But if he'd only been thrown into the locked hut, Panther might be able to dig under the door with his knife until he made enough room that Gator could wriggle out. And if there was no other way, he'd ask his friend if he wanted him to end things now, before Croon got to him. The water-carrying woman was gone, and Croon was walking toward the sugarcane field. Except for a sleeping dog, nothing living stood between him and Gator's prison place. After closing half the distance between him and the dog, Panther sank to his knees. He pressed his lips tightly together and sucked in air, making the sharp, high-pitched squeaks of a baby alligator in distress. The dog's head shot up. Then, the loose flesh around his neck moving tide-like, he clambered to his feet and slunk toward Panther. Panther held his breath, his body motionless and taut as he continued the harsh sound. Matching the animal's pace, he slowly lifted the arm that held his knife and tightened his grip. As he lunged for the dog's throat, he sent up a silent prayer to Breath-Giver, asking for forgiveness. The dog jerked violently backward, wrenching the knife out of his throat, but it was too late. As if the muscles had been stripped from his legs, the dog sank gracefully into a heap. He ducked his head, his tongue shot out as if trying to stem the blood. Then he spasmed and died. Breath-Giver, take this one to live among all animal spirits. Understand that I put the life of a man before that of a dog, but I could think of no other way. Panther spirit, guide me now. After running his hand over the dog's side, Panther slipped around the animal and again studied the distance between him and the hut with its locked door. He wished he'd brought his leather bag of sacred medicine, his musket, powder horn, and bullet pouch, but those things would only slow him when he needed to move as silently as a water moccasin. Shadows from the palmetto wall that surrounded the plantation reached out to caress the hut, seeming to protect it from harm, but if Croon decided to return to his captive, or the water-bearing woman came back out again— No, this was not warrior thought, not Tastanagi thought. Gator, Panther's whisper wafted out of him with no more strength than that of a newborn bird. Leaves skittered and danced with the increasing wind, but nothing else moved. Gator? Panther? For a moment, Panther couldn't move. He'd been looking for his friend for 2 days, and a long, sleepless night, and although he'd been certain he'd been tracking those who'd captured the former slave, there'd been times when he wondered if his spirit was strong enough to bring them face to face again. You are well? Panther asked. Nothing's broke. What if'n they sees you? You gots to go. It ain't— You speak too much, lowly clam digger. Did they chain you? My hands to a post. But the chains, they weren't tight enough. Panther understood. By compressing his fingers as tightly together as possible, Gator had managed to free himself. He might have torn his flesh, maybe even broken bones in the effort, but a man who has once felt chains around his neck and then tastes freedom doesn't easily turn his back on that freedom. The door? Panther asked. I tried. It's solid. Someone just give me water. My first. I've been trying to dig out, using the pan. Panther grunted, then froze, his senses suddenly as alive as if he'd been touched by lightning. From where he crouched, he couldn't see any sign of danger, but he wouldn't have survived 20 winters if he hadn't taken to heart his spirit's instincts. He was Panther. He lived Panther. Trusting Gator not to break the silence, he breathed in a deep lungful of air and tested it for messages. Damp, heavy, different somehow. The hut stood between him and the main house and blocked too much of the sugarcane field. If Croon— Leave! Run! Sharp pricks of warning slid down his spine.
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.